Ben Dubin, thanks for being here. Super excited that you're here. I have a million questions. I saw you at the Scottsdale Training Academy, and I saw you and Jessica doing a. I missed the cold plunge part, but I saw the breathing part. Was it Will Hof? Is that what it's
Wim
called?
Hof.
Wim.
Mm-hmm.
Wim
Yep.
Hof. I'm going to get that wrong 15 more
That's
times,
okay.
maybe 16. And that's all super cool. First of all, I'm dying to know how you got into all this.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like how you got into all
Yeah.
this and how it's helping the guys.
Yeah, for sure. So, well, thank you for having me on. It's always just a great opportunity to talk about this side of not just me, but this side of the fire service
Yeah.
when it comes to mental health. As far as how I got into it, I'll be the first one to tell you I never thought I'd be the guy ever talking about breath work. I never thought I'd be the guy talking about ice baths. I never thought I'd be the guy talking about mental health. It was never something I set out with intention to do. I always thought that subject was way too big for someone like me to even begin to understand, and not just understand, but then to provide value for anyone else when it comes to that aspect of who we are as firefighters or as humans in general. So everyone has a story, and I won't go into too much of the details because the gist of it is what's important is most of us that find this place in our lives where we begin to teach others, it's usually from something that we learned because of something that happened to us. We went through a hard time, we were able to get out of it, we eventually saw the lessons during that difficult time, and then we chose to take those lessons that we learned, and we realized we have a responsibility to share those lessons with other people so they hopefully don't have to go through the same difficult times that we did. So the kind of 30,000 foot overview is back in 2017. I was a firefighter in Tempe. I still am. I got injured at our training center in what should have been a very easy, short 4 month. Hey, you tore your distal bicep in your arm. Let's go have surgery. Let's rehab it. We'll be back in no time at all. Tiny little speed bump turned into a 16-month, three separate surgery ordeal. Um, kind of cloudy on why it took that long, but for lack of a better way to put it, the first surgery did not go very well and ended up having to have two additional surgeries to fix what was not done correctly during the first one. Um, and going into becoming a firefighter, a lot of my identity had been around, being physically fit. My background as a strength and conditioning coach, I worked in that industry for over 20 years. I have my degree in exercise science from ASU. I have a passion for physical health, and I or coached at a very high level for a company called Exos. They used to be called Athletes Performance. So I put a lot of stock in who I am, not just as a coach from a physical fitness standpoint, but from, what I represent to myself. So my entire identity kind of wrapped around this idea of me being a firefighter, me being physically fit, and, just me being able to serve. And the second that I got injured, that rug kind of got pulled out from underneath me, and I didn't see it coming. I had no idea how much emphasis of my life I had put into that aspect of who I was. And it brought me to a very, very dark place. Um, the pain that I was in with the arm, the lack of surgery going well, the lack of rehab going well. We have a 1-year-old son at the time. I'm hurt all the time. I'm in pain. I'm not being a good dad. I'm not being a good husband. And on top of that, my identity is completely gone of who I thought I was. And I remember like 6 months into this process, I look at myself in the mirror and I just didn't even recognize myself anymore. And I feel like it happened overnight. I'm like,
Wow.
how the heck did I get here? And how did this happen so fast? This was never supposed to happen. This is not who I am. And I remember hearing about this breath work, this Wim Hof guy, several years back when I worked for Colorado Springs Fire Department. And I started practicing a little bit up there, mainly because I wanted to get used to the cold weather. I was an Arizona boy, been here my entire life, and was now up in Colorado. And this temperature change, the environment was challenging me, like I think it would most people that
Sure.
spent their entire life in a desert. So my original intention when I first started practicing this method was purely from a physical standpoint of I want to get used to the cold. I don't want the cold to impact me. I want my SCBA to last longer. Very, very basic things that I think a lot of us would want. And so I practiced when I was up there and it was great and I got those benefits, but that's all I was going for. I didn't know there was anything else. I didn't know that this concept, this method went any deeper than that. And when I ended up getting hurt and ended up going through this ordeal of being on light duty for that long and not serving and my identity shattering, about 6 months into the process, when I had realized that I was not who I wanted to be, I reinvested myself in this method, hoping for something to change.
Mm-hmm.
When I first heard about it, people were talking anecdotally about these mental health benefits, and I had no desire to have that at the time. So I had zero intention of ever learning about that sort of stuff because I didn't think I needed it
Mm-hmm.
when I first started practicing. But now, I was at a very low point, a very dark point in my life. As a husband, as a father, I wasn't serving as a firefighter, and I was going to try anything I could. And right after my second surgery, I just dedicated myself to practicing and waking up every day and somehow doing the breathing and somehow getting cold. I didn't care what it looked like. I was going to do anything it took to feel just a little bit better and kind of gain back some of this control that I had lost for such a long time. And my wife was my bigger supporter. My son was a big supporter, and she was side by side with me, and she's the one who recognized this change in me
Hmm.
after about 2 months of practicing. Almost every day, she she said I was happy. She was able to tell that I
Wow.
was happy, that I felt good about myself, that I wasn't in the place that I was before, and all I was doing was doing a little bit of breathing and getting a little bit cold every single day. And what this taught me was that, regardless of my circumstances, regardless of my outcome with my arm, whether I was going to be able to come back to work or not, I still had control over how I felt. I was still in charge. My environment didn't have to determine how I think, how I act, and how I felt like I had let it done the previous 6 months. And then, she is the one who pushed me to go learn how to teach this. She's like, Ben, if you can feel this good, regardless of what's going on right now around you,
Mm.
your fire family needs to know about this.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to go learn as much as you can, because if you can just go help one person based off what you can know, then
Sure.
all this is worth it. And so when you're going through these hard things, the light, there's no light. You're deep in this dark place. And it isn't until you're on the other side of it that you look back and say, oh my gosh, this happened for this reason. I got to learn this, and this helped me through this so much that I got to make sure other people in my
Yeah.
circle, in my fire family, at least have the opportunity to learn the impact this can have in their lives. And then from there forward, we have dedicated every ounce of our time away from the fire service to building our company, to going out there and making sure that every firefighter at least gets the chance, at least gets the opportunity to see whether or not this practice fits in the framework of their reality, because everyone deserves to know. And not just the firefighters, but their families at home. They deserve to know too whether or not this has value for them. And that's really how I got into it. It's just from a hard time in my life where nothing else is working. And the beautiful, simple practice of doing some breath work and getting cold
Wow.
brought me to a whole new understanding of what it feels like to be happy, to be strong, and to be healthy. And it's simple and it's beautiful. And a decade later, it still is doing its work for me.
So, get folks, maybe just someone who isn't a firefighter, up to speed on mental health in the fire service in general. What kind of things are firefighters exposed to? What kind of traumatic things do they see and experience, and the quantity of it that can make these mental health crises happen?
Yeah, and I think it's a combination of so many different aspects of one, just being a human and having relationships at work and at home, and as well as the calls that we run on and the sleep deprivation. They're all additive when it comes to our mental health. And, firefighters, and I'm sure you've heard this already, are exposed to way more traumatic events than a general population. Sometimes we'll experience more in a few weeks than some people will in their entire careers. And whether or not we want to believe that impacts us at some level it does. But I think everyone's different. My approach, our approach when it comes to looking at mental health in the fire service is, yeah, we want to be good at our job. We want to perform at a very high level. But where my passion is, where my wife's passion is the second that you clock out of work and you go home and you open that front door and your spouse and your kids are staring at you, welcoming you home,
Yeah.
that's where we care about you being at your best. Because our families, they sacrifice so much for us to do this career that we love. We're gone a lot, and we owe it to them, we owe it to ourselves that when we walk in that front door, that they are getting the person, the dad, the mom, the spouse that they deserve, and we're getting what we deserve with that time with our family. And so everyone's gonna have a reason that they would want to practice something like this or go seek counseling. The more I talk to people at work, it seems like it's that home life balance that is generally off for one reason or another,
Yeah.
whether it's the fatigue, whether it's um, just being irritable, being angry from just a difficult day that we had. A lot of them go home and the stress continues. And so, like I said, we have a responsibility as first responders, as firefighters. The second that we walk in our front door at home, our job starts, and that's being a spouse to our
Yeah.
partner, that's being a parent to our kids. And we all deserve to connect and to love. And when it comes to when I see what mental health has become and how do we improve it, for me, it starts at home. Starting at home, building those relationships, solidifying those relationships, making sure that everyone knows that we are in this for each other, that we understand our families sacrifice so much. So what can we do on our end to make sure we are there with 100% of who we are when we are home with you?
What what gets in the way of so you have a firefighter with who's having a mental health crisis. Is it a culture thing where they don't want to? Because honestly, if I was a hardcore firefighter dude, which I'm not, I would not be doing yoga
Mhm.
or breathing exercises or cold plunges. Like I would look at that as I don't know, frou frou and just is that does that impede progress? Is there a cultural mentality of just tough it, take it, and just go forward and not really solve things, and then it just becomes this giant problem, and they're
Yeah, there absolutely is, and I think it's even specific to the department that you work for. So I know in Tempe, I feel like because of the conversations we have at the kitchen table, because of the resources that we provide our members, we are doing a really good job of allowing our membership to have these difficult conversations and allowing our membership to kind of drop our own egos and be able to ask for help because we talk about it's strength to ask for help. It's not strength to say you're okay
I
when you're
love
not.
that. It's strength to ask for help,
I'll
Certainly
even,
not
not
easy.
I
weakness.
got a text message yesterday from one of my firefighters who I was helping out, and I'll just read this to you, and you can kind of see where his head's
Mhm.
at and what we're working with. This is at the end of him going through the breath work. He said, "Thank you so much for everything you do, Ben. It's so hard to drop your ego and ask for help. But having someone like you that understands our job and is non-judgmental is a very rare thing." So I think those pieces of that puzzle, and this is not at all to toot my own horn because that's not who I am, but the non-judgmental aspect, a lot of us have a fear of being judged. But the more and more conversations that I've had at the kitchen table with my fellow firefighters about some of my own struggles and some things that I've worked through, we start to see that we have a lot more things in common than we do different.
Yeah.
And when you begin to see that you all are kind of going through the same thing, struggling with the same thing, you realize that you're not alone, that it is okay, it is normal, and we're going to work together. We're going to have each other's back to make sure that we can get on the other end of it any way possible.
So you certainly must have some success stories at this point where maybe you got a guy, a firefighter who's in a bad place, who's recommended these things.
Mhm.
That ain't gonna help me at all. and then it does.
Hmm. Yeah. So, this method, which when you break it down, there's three big parts to it. There's a breath work portion, there's a exposure to cold portion, and then there's commitment. And that's kind of the three pillars of what this entails. And, in the classes that we teach, we do focus quite a bit on education, where we want people to understand the science behind it, understand your stress response from a physiological perspective, understand what is happening inside your body, what is happening inside your brain right now when you experience stress. Doesn't have to be at work, doesn't have to be at home, it's just stress because you're a human being and we're all going to experience stress. But what changes is when you actually get a chance to go through and experience what the breath work feels like and what the ice feels like. Because until you actually experience the value in it from a firsthand perspective, there is no way you're going to understand how this can impact you. And so, the first and most important aspect of those success stories is getting them in the door and say, hey, you get to decide whether or not this has value for you. That's not my decision to make. My responsibility, our responsibility is to show you the correct, the safe, the most efficient way to do this work. And you understand why and the hows. Then at the end of the day, you get to decide whether or not this fits in your reality. And in every class we teach, everyone kind of fits into one of three buckets. And this happens it happened in Scottsdale when you were there last week. A third of the group comes up to us and they say the words, that just changed my life. And we've heard that over and over and over again. And it's so humbling every time we hear it. And it drops my jaw how powerful that is. And then a third of the group comes up to us and they say, hey, that was pretty cool. I felt something pretty neat. Never knew I could feel like that with just my breath. I need to learn more about it. I don't know yet. And then a third of the group comes up to us and they shake our hands. They look us in the eye. They say, hey, thank you for your time. We appreciate what you're doing, but right now this just isn't for me. And that's okay. And you're allowed to fit in any group that you want. Like I said, it's not our decision to make as the ones that are bringing this
Yeah.
education and practical forward. It's up to you to give this hour, 2 hours, everything you have. So then by the time it is over, you know for sure whether or not this is something that you want to go after. Because if you just show up to class and you give it a 60% effort,
Yeah.
you're not going to know. So we really try and set the class up to understand that the effort that you put in this very short period of time, it does have the potential to change your life if you let it. But what we don't want to have happen is by the end of the class, you're hearing your other firefighters talk about what they got out of it, and you're thinking to yourself in your head, like, dang it, I should have done it a little better. I should have gone a little harder. I should have given it more of my energy. And there's no reason anyone should be saying that as long as you give this everything you have, so then you get to understand, hey, yeah, this is something that can help me and help my family. And I can't tell you how many classes we've taught when as soon as the firefighter gets done with the breathing, their first thought is, my significant other needs this too.
Wow.
Because they see the stress the spouse has at home
Yeah.
and they understand. And we're so much of serving and trying to help people that we're always thinking about somebody else. Whether I was working with the SEAL teams or with Delta, it was the same thing. These men would wake up from this breathing aspect, and the first thing is, my wife needs this. Because we're always thinking, hey, how can this help someone else? But this also gives them an opportunity for them to see how this can help them.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll validate it. I went to one of your classes with
Mm-hmm.
zero expectations. I just wanted to get in the cold plunge and figure out a little bit more behind that. And turned out there was some breath work stuff to it. And I absolutely can validate that. And I mean, you spoke to it very well. You said, hey, man, you got to give this everything you want or everything you got. And otherwise, it's not going to work. I'm like, well, I'm not going to waste my time here. I'll give it everything I got. I couldn't believe it. I thought it was great. I guess I'll speak more to it a little bit, but for people watching, I think it's like they can look at it and be like, they look at this, oh, it's another mental health thing. Oh, it's another thing. Sure, I'm sure it works. It's all in your head, blah, 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 power through. Could you just talk about real quick, like the nuts and bolts of what your classes are?
Mm-hmm.
And then I think I could probably help expand on a couple more things, at least as an attendee of your class,
Yeah.
I think really hit home with me. But if you could just do the nuts and bolts of what your classes look like with you and your wife.
Oh, for sure. So, like I said, we're pretty heavy on the education front, and I think that's sometimes what's missing from these courses is the practical education. So we understand, why am I doing this? Why am I even here? Why am I showing up here at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when I've already ran 5 calls and I'm going to be, on shift for the next 30 hours, right? What I've got better things I can do. So we have to bring the education forward. And I think when we start to talk about stress and our stress response and our physiology, people begin to understand the problem. And until you know that there's a problem that can be fixed, you're not going to be searching for anything like this. You
Yeah.
know, we were fortunate to take all of Scottsdale Fire, all their line personnel. We were their third quarter wellness training last year, so we saw every member of Scottsdale Fire. And you can imagine these guys have been on the job 25, 30 years. They have never once looked up the word breathwork on Google. They would never even think about doing something like this. But when you start to engage with them and let them understand that, hey, this is how your physiology is supposed to work, here's the problem. And guess what? They can identify with that problem because one, they're human, and two, they've been doing this job a very long time. And nobody wants to feel less happy. Nobody wants to feel less good. Everyone, no matter how great life is, wants a little bit more, wants to be a little bit happier. So what I think is important for everyone to understand before we talk about just the basics of the class, if you're okay with it, is to talk about our stress response really quick. So in our brain, there's something called the amygdala. The amygdala is your alarm bell that's going to say, hey, something bad's about to happen. Every human has it. It's not unique to firefighters. It just says, hey, stress is about to happen. Your amygdala activates your autonomic nervous system. And you have two parts to that, your sympathetic and your parasympathetic. Most of us know those words. Sympathetic is fight or flight. Parasympathetic is rest and digest.
Okay.
Right? So sympathetic is engaged when your life is in danger, when you need to survive. And parasympathetic is engaged the rest of your life.
Okay.
So as human beings, we're supposed to be in that parasympathetic 99.9% of our lives, right? Because we're not being threatened in any way, shape, or form with the way our physiology has developed over the years. So what happens is the amygdala recognizes a stress. Let's say many, many years ago, we're cavemen or cavewomen. We're walking outside to get some food for our family. And we grab some food, put it in our knapsack. We got some apples for our wife and our kids, or our spouse and our kids. And we start walking back to our cave. And there's a tiger that starts chasing after you, right? That's a threat. That's stress. So what happens is your amygdala in your brain recognizes, hey, something bad's about to happen. We got to figure this out. We got to mobilize the troops or we're not going to survive this moment. So the amygdala taps into that fight or flight nervous system, the sympathetic response. And what it does is it activates something called the HPA axis.
Okay.
And all that stands for is hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals. The end result of that, and it happens in the snap of a finger, is you release your stress hormones. Your stress hormones are meant to protect you when you need them to protect you to survive whatever you are encountering at that moment. And the three major stress hormones are adrenaline, noradrenaline, and cortisol. Most of us have heard of all three of those at one point or another in our life. Adrenaline and noradrenaline increase your heart rate, increase your blood flow to get blood where it needs to go. Cortisol is extremely important because it releases glucose or sugar to allow your muscles to have the energy they need to either engage with the threat or to run away as fast as you can.
Okay.
So your stress hormones that get released are releasing there to protect you in real time.
Yeah.
They're good for us. So what happens is
All the
this.
stuff you need to run from a tiger.
It is, right? Exactly. Because we're not going to fight a tiger. But the concept would be the same thing if you're
Well,
going to engage. Ben might. Yeah.
Ben Lindquist would.
Let's clarify which band.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you would.
I think I'm
Yeah.
faster than both of you guys. so I'm
I
good
think
to
so.
go. All right.
That's right. So you're exactly right. You're not going to fight. You're going to run. But those hormones are meant to protect you during that time. So what happens is your amygdala recognizes the threat. Tiger's chasing you. Taps into the HPA axis. We dump our stress hormones. Let's say they did exactly what they needed to do, and we run just fast enough to get inside our cave, and we shut our cave door. And there's no way that tiger can get to us. That threat has been neutralized. It's gone. It's lost interest. It's going to a whole different side of the forest. What happens next is the most important part and why we practice this method. What happens after we've shut that cave door and we've neutralized that threat is cortisol, which we just released within our stress response, goes back up to the brain and it says, hey, there's no more threat. There's no more stress. We can switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic.
Okay.
So we can switch from fight or flight to rest and digest.
Right.
So the way that we switched from a engaged situation of those stress hormones to a way of being in the rest and digest was by having a stressful response and then neutralizing that stress. It can't get you. You're completely safe.
Yeah.
And that allows your physiology to actually switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So what's the problem?
You get home, the cortisol's still pumping. You can't shut it off, and you
Mhm.
need ways like breathing
Yep.
and cold plunge.
And I'll go even deeper than that, though.
Yeah.
So Your physiology does not know the difference between a real life situation happening right now than one you are thinking about in your head. Your
Ooh,
physiology reacts the same way every single time. So as a firefighter, if I think about a call I had 10, 12 years ago,
you're reliving it.
my physiology thinks that is happening. So
Yeah.
the amygdala starts alarming. Your HPA axis starts dumping those hormones. It might be short-lived, might be long-lived, who
Yeah.
knows? Your body's being flooded with adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol. While you're in that thought, your heart might be beating a little faster. You might be breathing faster. You might be starting to sweat. You're activating that fight or flight. Once that thought goes away, cortisol goes back up and says, hey, no more threat, no more stress. We can switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic. So then we have to be honest with ourselves, and in our class, we have to be honest with ourselves. How many real life stressful situations are we facing every single day versus how many are we thinking about in our head?
Yep.
When we tend to think about the past, we'll think about the worst thing that happened in the past and what we should have done better, would have done better. When we anticipate the future, we anticipate worst case scenario.
Yeah.
We're taught as human beings to anticipate worst case scenario. We're taught as firefighters to train on worst case scenario. So if anything less happens, we're actually going to be prepared. But your physiology thinks that that is constantly happening over and over again.
Yeah.
So what it's going to do, it's going to take the path of least resistance. Instead of you turning on and off all day long, going from fight or flight to rest and digest to fight or flight to rest and digest, it's going to say, you know what? You're going to have a thought anyway in the next 10 minutes that's going to turn me on. There is no reason for me to shut off. There is no reason for me to ever reset and go back to the parasympathetic, because you're going to have a thought. Something's going to happen where I'm going to have to be activated. And it is so inefficient of me to go up and down, up and down, up and down all day long that I'm just going to stay right here on the edge of fight or flight 24/7, just waiting for that next shoe to drop.
Wow.
And so most humans and most firefighters have not felt what the parasympathetic nervous system is in 20 years. And we'll have that feedback from classes. They'll go down with the breathing, and firefighters will say, these veterans, I have not felt that much peace in over 20 years. It's
Jeez.
because they've been stuck in the wrong part of your nervous system. And it's not their fault. That's just the way life is. So what this allows you to do, it allows you to automatically, under your control, make sure you are putting yourself in the parasympathetic of who you are. So then when you walk in that front door, saying hi to your spouse and hi to your kids, they are getting their firefighter who is coming home in the right part of the nervous system. When you're in sympathetic fight or flight, you have one job: survival. Get from this hour to the next, get from this day to tomorrow. When you are in parasympathetic, that's where you can connect, that's where you can engage, that's where you can have love. In sympathetic, all you have is survival. So it is our responsibility to make sure we are going home to the ones that care about us, the ones that we care about, in the right part of who we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that's the impact that the breath work and the cold can have.
So what's the mechanics of it? Why does Wim Hof breath work change the brain? Why does
Yep,
cold exposure change the brain?
perfect.
Why is it helping the guys?
So
And why is it really the two thing? Is it okay for me to say? Is it the two things you focus on?
yep,
Like they're so dang good. Just do these. If you do anything, do these two things,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, the foundation, the basics are the best. And so I'll start with the ice, and it's going to tie into what we just talked about. The ice is a stress. The ice is a threat. If I said, hey, I'm just kidding, we're actually doing a hot tub evolution today, no one's going to be worried about it. No one's going to be thinking about it because no one cares. It
Yeah.
doesn't bring along any emotions. But the ice for humans has this innate place of fear. We are afraid of being cold. We're afraid of being cold too long, because if we get too cold for too long, something bad can happen. And what we're doing, we're training something called hormesis. Hormesis means exposing your body or your physiology to the right amount of stress for the right amount of time to adapt and become stronger. Whereas you expose yourself to the same stress for too long, it becomes detrimental. So if I were to go in an ice bath for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, that could kill me because I could get hypothermia.
Yeah.
Same thing as going into a weight room. If I just go bench press for 15 hours straight, I'm going to get hurt. Hormesis is something we do as humans all the time, but now we're just applying it to the deepest levels of who we are, our physiology. So the way the ice works is the ice is a threat. It's a stress. So as soon as you get into that environment, your amygdala, your alarm bell says, hey, this is bad. We have to mobilize the troops. We got to figure out how to survive these 2 minutes in this ice bath.
Okay.
So you're in the ice bath. You're being flooded with those stress hormones from the HPA axis, your hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenals. Dump those stress hormones inside your body. You got your adrenaline, noradrenaline, and your cortisol. We teach you through your breath how not to respond to that environment. And then the second after 2 minutes, you get out. What have we done to the stress? What have we done to the ice? We've neutralized it. It no longer can impact you because it's done. And so now we know with our physiology, once you've neutralized the threat, cortisol goes back up to the brain and says, hey, there's no more threat, there's no more stress. We can switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic.
So getting out of the
Getting
ice,
out is what puts you into the parasympathetic.
because it's very physical. It's shutting down. I'm out of it now. I can see with
Because
my
it's a
eyes.
threat.
Yeah.
Right. It's a threat, but
and it's
you're
over because I'm walking away from it. And
exactly.
it's really
So
interesting.
that's
man.
one part of it. The other part of it is look at the 30,000-foot overview of that ice is trying to determine how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Right? It's trying to take your breath away. It's trying to determine everything about yourself. What we teach people is that regardless of how difficult, how uncomfortable, how painful your environment might be, you always have a choice. You always have a choice in how fast you breathe. You always have a choice in what you think. You always have a choice in what you and how you act, and you always have a choice in how you feel. The goal is not to let that difficult environment determine anything about who you are as a human being. And what we teach people is through their breath is that cold, that stress does not have to change anything about who you are. And if we can learn to maintain our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, and our breath in that difficult environment and not let that impact us, we can do that anywhere else in life. Whether we're going to a structure fire with people trapped, going to a cardiac arrest, that's your environment. That's your ice bath. Where you're having an argument with your significant other, or the kids just did something at school. We always have a choice, but it's a muscle we have to train through hormesis of allowing yourself to see that regardless of how difficult this moment is, regardless of the hormones that are being dumped inside your body, you don't have to respond. And it just takes practice.
Wow.
I think, something you can probably say this considerably better than I do, but I fell into a category. I think most people, when they hear mental health or some sort of crisis or something like that, they think that's the time to seek out these options for treatment. And if there's something you can speak to, there's somebody who said, culture eats policy for breakfast. Like the way that we're going to regulate ourselves and the way that we're going to act within our culture is actually how we're actually going to do things. What I'm trying to get to, I guess, is that I didn't feel like I needed help. I haven't hit a crisis. I haven't hit a rock bottom. There's certainly some things that I didn't even know that you're dealing with. Like you said, you're living in the sympathetic nervous system like that. That's where I'm living, the constant stress. I didn't know that I was living there. I showed up to a class that I was told that it's pretty good. You should go check out Ben Dubin's class. And he said, hey, give it everything you got. And I did. And I was like, my God, there's something to that, right? So I guess we don't know if there's going to be 3 people that watch this, but if only one of those 3 people see some value, to be like, hey, don't wait for yourself to fall into this crisis. Don't wait for yourself to get to rock bottom, because with very minimal exposure to what you're doing, I've been able to significantly improve my life, what you're talking about, just my general mental health. I didn't have to wait for a crisis. And I know that there are people getting to that point, and they're certainly going to benefit from it. But have you had any success talking to those people who are like, I can appreciate everything's going good for you right now. Could I talk to you about maybe even making it better? Like,
Yeah.
would you be interested if I told you could? Because I can say that you did. I had no expectations of your class. I bought in, I did it. And I was like, I would have never thought there was any value for me in breath work. I've just heard so much about cold plunge. Everybody's talking about it. Let's do that.
The cold is sexy. The breath ain't sexy. It doesn't
Yeah.
get any attention, but it's as important, if not more important, than the cold.
You're a pro, dude. Everything you've talked about here, you clearly have put in a lot of thought into this, and the way that you talked about it is the same way you talked about it when I went to your class. And but I mean, what kind of success or what kind of effort have you put into capturing the people who aren't having a mental health crisis to say, hey man, I know your life seems good. Let me help you make it better.
Yeah, and I think that's the goal where we're trying to go with being proactive, right? And we've been very fortunate to be a part of the Glendale Fire Academies for the past couple years, and then now the Scottsdale Fire Academies, getting these recruits at the beginning of their career before their calls start adding up. But that we're proactive to me is always very interesting, because unless we're starting when we're 2 or 3 years old, we're never going to be proactive when it comes to mental health. My wife is a prime example from some of the things she went through during her childhood. If she had chose to join the fire service at 25 years old, she'd be bringing 25 years of some pretty bad stuff with her. And so our goal is to be as proactive as humanly possible, to allow these individuals to be exposed to these tools prior to, like you said, them facing a crisis. And I think the best metric of success is not hearing from people that are in crisis because it's just not happening anymore. And so I don't think there's any direct way to measure it, but what we do make sure that our recruits understand that life is going to get hard. Life sucks sometimes. It just does. Life is hard. Life hurts. We don't want anyone to get to the spot that I was at, clawing my way back up, doing everything I could to see if I can feel just 1% better. And for those individuals that, like you did that day, you just showed up, you didn't know what this was about, you trusted someone else who said, hey, you need to check this out, this might be worth your time. And because you did that, you got to see the value before you needed it in your life. And I used to be very hard pressed at the beginning of teaching this, like trying to make everyone do this, make everyone do the breath work, make everyone do the ice. And that was just a bit immature and naive of me. And like I said, a third of the people are going to fit into one group of saying, hey, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming out. This is great. But for right now, this just isn't for me. But the magic statement there is for right now. They will at least have this always because it's free. It's air, oxygen. You don't got to go anywhere. You don't got to pay for it. And then cold water. We can find cold water in a lot of places. But this is always going to be with you for the rest of your life. Whether you're someone who practices once a month, once a year, every day, twice a day, knowing that I have this in my back pocket, regardless of how hard life might be right now, whether it's grieving the loss of a loved one, whether it's not sleeping for 24 hours, whether it's having relationship challenges, financial challenges, I know that I can do something right now to make sure that I put myself in the best position to be successful from a nervous system perspective. Plus, you're just going to feel better. You're going to feel better at the end than when you started. And so I wish we could capture everybody. I really do. But I've learned over the past almost 10 years of teaching this that this makes its way to the people who need it. And then the word spreads, and then the word spreads. Like my coworker who texted me, he'd been practicing kind of the breath work on and off for about a year, but I sent him a session that was a lot longer than he was used to. And then he had his breakthrough. And so what I think we need to do a really good job of making sure everyone understands that this is available. A lot of people, like you said, you had no idea what this is. You've probably never Google searched breath work in your entire life. Making sure that we can at least get this information out there because every single individual deserves to know whether or not this has value in their life. And the only way they're going to know is not by talking to someone. It's by just getting the chance to be exposed to it, whether it's with me or someone else, just somehow being exposed to it so then they can make the determination for themselves. Because we don't want people going through crisis, but I'll tell you what, this has value there too. And we talk about the ice, and I talk about in class, we talk about suicide because it's something we have to talk about. I know Phoenix has lost several members. A lot of departments have over the past several years.
Yeah.
And when we look at suicide or those individuals that think about attempting it, we've heard a lot of common themes as far as I can't stop these thoughts in my head. I just want to go to sleep. I just want it to be quiet. I just want to shut it off. And it's just going nonstop 24/7. And so it's just wreaking havoc in how they feel about themselves and how they view this world. They felt like they've lost control of their thoughts. So I always ask the class a question. It's like, what do you think you're thinking about when you get into 35-degree ice water? You're thinking, this is freaking cold.
Yeah.
But what are you not thinking about?
Your problem.
Everything else in life. And for some individuals, that might be the first time in years that they have not thought about their problems.
Just getting them out of their head
for just a minute.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the gap we need to buy time to get to the next day. To show them that, oh my gosh, I don't have to be a victim to my thoughts. I do have this ability to actually be right here, right now. And that could be the first time in who knows how long that monkey brain is actually shut off. And if we can buy ourselves 30 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes, maybe, just maybe that's enough time for us to get to tomorrow. And then the next day, and we keep building, and we keep building, and we keep practicing. And then they begin to see that, hey, we do have control.
Nice. Yeah, dude, I totally agree. Like I said, I'm a believer in it, and I hope somebody picks it up. Because if you told them, hey, I can make your life better, or I can help you avoid crisis, you interested in either one of those two things? I think the answer 100% would be yes. So I hope people actually consider it.
Yeah, there's no harm. It's breathing in cold water. But the big thing is safety. Like when it comes to the ice, you have to do it safe. You have to do it right every single time. There is no reason from a nervous system perspective to go more than 2 or 3 minutes. Zero reason. And our approach is purely from a mental health standpoint.
Yeah.
We are teaching you, regardless of the stress hormones that you're releasing, that you have a choice in how you respond. After 90 seconds, those stress hormones are no longer being released. They are being flushed out of your body. That's just the way it is. So we don't need to do anything longer than that. So we go an extra 30 seconds, we stay our 2 minutes, and we get out. We need people that are going to push themselves and push the limits, but it does not belong in our culture of the fire service. It does not belong in a fire station. Our approach is from a purely mental health standpoint, learning how to handle, process, and let go of our sympathetic fight or flight response. We don't hold on to it. And that's what the ICE is teaching us. And we have to do it right. We have to do it safe every single time. So we continue to have this tool at our disposal.
How can firefighters find you in your program and be a part of it?
Yep. So, our social media, we are Connect to It with the number 2. So Instagram is at Connect to It. It's my wife and I that we are so passionate about bringing this idea to the fire service of not just the firefighter, but the whole family, the spouses, the people at home. Because I'm going to go back to this. Our family sacrificed so much for us.
Yeah.
And if something were to happen to us, or we made a decision that took us out of the equation, our families are the ones that are left. And what are we doing to support them? What are we doing to make sure that they have all the resources, make sure that they know that we have all the resources? How are we integrating them to understand that we are all in this together? It's not just about the firefighter. It's about all of us having each other's back, whether it's at work or it's at home. And that's what we bring together in our class, is purely focused on building that family.
What I love about it all is it's not a prescription.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do it in the car. You could do breathing in the car.
As long as you're not driving.
Yeah, I heard that disclaimer. I was like,
Yeah.
he's going to stop you.
Passenger
As long as you're
seat
not
only,
driving.
back
Yeah.
seat.
Yes. There are some safety things.
Laying down in the back
Laying down. Yeah.
while your car's self-driving.
Yep.
It's just tremendous, and just really just good job on all of this, and it's super interesting how your journey led you to these discoveries, and that you had to share it with the other guys. Nobody wants people. You don't want people you work with to suffer, unnecessarily, and but I see what you're saying about the merits of just start doing this before you're a big stressed out, losing it guy. Have these tools, and I just think it's amazing. I'm gonna try some Wim Hof breathing tonight. Just because my wife does it all the time, and I've dismissed it, haven't I? Like, she's like, I'm going in the bedroom for a while. Leave me alone. I'm gonna be doing my breathing. It's just like, I'm gonna do that on the couch with my laptop. It's like, But yet she is the most even, calm, together person, probably because of what she's doing that I'm not doing. But
I think the biggest thing is firefighters, we deserve to feel good, but our families deserve this too.
Yeah,
like my spouse,
you're right. Yeah,
my wife deserves to have me home. My kids deserve to have me home in the right part of where I'm supposed to be. And if I don't do my work, they're not getting who they signed up for. It's up to me.
You're amazing. It's up to us. You're an inspirational guy.
Thank you guys.
And thanks for coming on the podcast and sharing what you got going on. And I found it incredibly interesting.
Anytime. We can talk about a lot more next time.
You got it. Thanks,
Bring your wife on too.
Yep.
I know
she's excited.
Yeah. Jessica's great, by the way. But all right, we'll talk to you again, man.
Yep. Sounds great.